Honor detail, attend.
Present ho! With the opening of our ceremony, especially the band and Mr. Civic and Sergeant Obici and the Junior ROTC. If you would like to join us now, you can go in through the back doors and join us, and we'll continue the festivities inside. Thank you very, very much for a great job. It was so impressive to see you guys. Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a gorgeous day today, and I'm so glad you could all join us for this celebration. Welcome to the dedication of Admiral Ernest J. King Elementary. My name is Diane Kissel, and I am proud to serve as the first principal of our new elementary school. This is a celebration for Lorain City Schools and for the community of Lorain. A celebration not only dedicating this building, but also recognizing the past 10 years of commitment, planning, and determination by all stakeholders to bring our 13th state-of-the-art school building to completion for all the children of Lorain. This Admiral King site is a unique location. It brings together the history of Lorain High School and Middle School, along with the proud heritage of Admiral King High. We also brought with us the legacy of excellence from Lakeview Elementary, our previous home. Artifacts, heritage, ancestry, traditions, and history combine to define us, give us our identity. It instills civic pride and patriotism. These things are innate and oftentimes lost as generations pass on. These past weeks, we have made this building our own through nostalgic displays reminiscent of Lorain High and Admiral King High, and presentations by Frank Sipkowski from the Black River Historical Society. Students repainted the anchor, teachers focused lessons on 9/11, and students wrote essays on heroes. There has been a rekindling of that spirit of pride and the importance to pass on our history, our story of Lorain. On behalf of Lorain City Schools Board of Education, the Superintendent, Ed Bramman, and Admiral King staff, welcome to all of you. The parents, community members, distinguished guests, and especially the Admiral King family. At this time, if you would please stand for the posting of our colors by Sergeant Obici and the Lorain High School Junior ROTC Cadets and the Disabled American Veterans, Chapter 20. Please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by our own Admiral King teacher, Gina Glorioso. Thank you. Ho, ho.
say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I want to take a moment to thank the Lorain High School Band and Director, Mr. Tim Civic, for the ceremony outside, and a special thanks to Sergeant Obici and the members of the Junior ROTC program, along with the Disabled American Vets Chapter 20, and especially Miss Glorioso. Thanks to everyone for sharing their talents to open our dedication ceremony. This is our time to show off, and I think we're doing ourselves proud. I hope you enjoyed it so far. I would now like to recognize our distinguished guests, starting with the Lorain City School Board of Education. Tim Williams, Vice President, Paul Bieber, Jim Smith, and Bill Sturgill. Our Treasurer, Dale Weber, the Chief of Operations, Dan DiNicola, the Architect, Eric Shaver from McDonald, Castle and Bassett, Dana Strizzi, the Construction Manager from Hammond Construction, Mark Barr from the Ohio School Facilities Commission. Thank you. Honored guests in the audience, would the members of Admiral Ernest King's family please stand? Thank you. We are truly honored that you all chose to come from far away and join us. Would the members of the USS King Association stand and be acknowledged? Our distinguished guests from Washington, the Pentagon, the Navy, or from the military, present or past, please stand. Thank you. Would any state, city, local, or federal officials stand at this time and be recognized? The members of Charleston Village, please stand and be acknowledged. along with the members of the Black River Historical Society. And finally, last but not least, the Admiral King Elementary staff, please stand, along with any past or present Lorain City School employees. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to introduce Lorain City Schools Superintendent, Dr. Ed Bramman, who has graced us with a return engagement since he was also superintendent in 2002. I've had the privilege of knowing Dr. Bramman these past years and am honored to introduce him to you now. Dr. Bramman.
Thank you, Principal Kissel. It's an excellent feeling coming back to this school district, and as the principal mentioned, we're showing off now. It's been a long road, but great things are happening in this school system, and great things are about to happen in the future as well. I've had the opportunity in my first 7 or 8 days here to attend 3 major events. Last Sunday was the dedication to the Southfield Middle School, excellent dedication ceremony. The alumni bonfire Friday evening, Thursday evening. Lots of alumni coming out. A little chilly down there with the winds off of Lake Erie. I kind of forgot about that for a while. And of course, today's event. I'm amazed at the school facilities and the classroom technology in Lorain City Schools. When I retired about 9.5 years ago, we were just in the planning stages. We passed the large bond issue, and the citizens were grateful to allow us to do that. And Mr. Dan DiNicola and the Ohio School Facilities Commission are to be commended. I'd like a round of applause. What an amazing situation. This is the 13th building over the past 9 years that's been completed. We have one more major project, I understand, Mr. DiNicola, and that is the new high school. And that's another exciting event that I will be maybe a part of, and so that would conclude our facilities in our classroom building. I think probably, I don't know if this is an understatement or not, I would think that Lorain City School has the best classroom facilities and buildings in the state of Ohio. I don't think that's an underestimate. I'd like to share with you again, and I'm trying to get an understanding of the situation in all of our major departments here, and I met with my chief reporting officers and trying to get into the second level tier. I plan to visit the buildings, each building and each faculty over the next 3 weeks so that we can have an open communication about the issues in the school district. But early on, I see 3 major indicators of success for Lorain City Schools. Number 1, as I mentioned, I truly believe we have the best facilities in the state of Ohio. Number 2, our state report cards are indicating academic improvement. That's a good thing. And our early ADM reports point to increased student enrollment. I think, this is after several years of declining enrollment in Lorain City Schools. This is a major sign that the word is getting out into the community that things are happening in Lorain City Schools. Our job now is to maintain current staffing levels in each building, in each classroom. However, I think we all know that this school community needs new revenue in order to accomplish that. Just to maintain the current staffing in the classroom, the current support staff, the current custodial staff. Many of you know, I see many retired teachers out there and ex-board members. We have not received new money in almost 2 decades, 19 and a half years. We have been working through grants from the state and federal government and the General Revenue Fund from the state of Ohio. I can't tell you how crucial this upcoming income tax levy is going to be for Lorain City Schools. Yeah, we can have beautiful facilities, but if we have to go through major cutbacks in professional staff, custodial staff, support staff, it will all be for naught. I'd like to introduce a person that is giving her all many, many hours, and she's the president of our levy committee, Bambi Dillon. Bambi, would you please stand? We will be, as a citizens committee, knocking on doors. We've got a steak fry coming up. We're going to do everything in our power. Again, this is not a property tax, this is an income tax. Everything in our power to get this thing passed. It is crucial for the future of the school district. So I urge each and every one of you to get out in November and support our levy. Congratulations, Principal Kissel. A wonderful building you have here. I wish you the best in academics this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now have the first of 2 Admiral King students to speak on what our new school and the local history means to them. Lavelle Hall is a 5th grader here at Admiral King. Would the proud family of Lavelle please stand? Where are you? There you are. Lavelle?
Although many of our students will miss Lakeview Elementary, located on West 11th Street, which operated for 6 years from 1951 through 2011. We are proud to attend Admiral Ernest J. King Elementary School. We have great reasons to celebrate our brand new building. Not only is King Elementary located where the old Lorain High School site once was, it is named after a brilliant expert who was promoted to Fleet Admiral and commanded the largest fleet in the history of the United States and the world. The old Lorain High School was the alma mater of the late Ernest J. King. It was also the former site of Lorain Middle School from 1951 through 2005. Let's see a show of hands of those who have graduated from Lorain High School who are here today. Our new facility is titled after a highly respected admiral who was born in Lorain, Ohio on November 23, 1878. He graduated from Lorain High School in 1897 and later attended the United States Naval Academy. Mr. Ernest lived by his motto, "Do all that we can with what we have." Having said that, I know we can achieve all things and rise to high expectations that our principal, Mrs. Kissel, and all of our teachers have for all students. The Admiral King staff has a high level of confidence that we students will succeed, as did President Franklin D. Roosevelt of Mr. King. Through his career, King held various leadership positions in the United States Navy and was the first man to simultaneously hold the positions of Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations. Lorain City School provides me and my fellow classmates opportunities to lead, and because of this, I am thankful. Admiral King Elementary students are prepared to become great future leaders, and in honor of Admiral King, whose dedicated service was being a military strategist, we proudly dedicate our building and vow to serve our community as we celebrate the opening of Admiral Ernest J. King Elementary School. Thank you.
Our next student speaker is Caitlin Ramey Rowland, who is also a 5th grader here at Admiral King. Would the Ramey Rowland family please stand? I want you to know these students worked long and hard. These are their own words, and you can't help but be impressed with what they're saying and how much effort they put into it.
I have had many great experiences as a student in Lorain City Schools. 2 years ago, my classroom had a chance to go on a field trip led by Mr. Sapkowski of the Lorain Historical Society. We took a guided bus tour around many historical sites in Lorain. I learned a lot about our city that day. I learned about how Lorain grew from a trading post on the Black River to an economic center of industry. I learned about the devastation caused by the 1924 tornado. I learned about Lorain's role in the Underground Railroad, and I learned about the man this school is named after, Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. Our city has produced artists like Steve DeHanis, poets like Helen Steiner Rice, Nobel Prize winner Toni Morrison, Pulitzer Prize winner Michael Dirda, and military leaders 4-star General Johnny Wilson and Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. When I was asked to speak today, I thought about why it was so important to learn those things. Then I thought about how I felt after that field trip. I felt proud to be a citizen of Lorain. I thought about how the community came together in 1924 to rebuild after a tragedy. And I felt hope for the future of Lorain as the city tries to rebuild again. We should remember all that we have to be proud of. You see, Lorain has produced real heroes. Heroes are not comic book characters or singers with #1 hits. Heroes are real people who are willing to sacrifice for what's right. Whether it's hiding slaves on a boat to cross over a lake to freedom, or making strategic battle plans to win a war in order to preserve democracy, Lorain has produced real heroes. I am thankful for the volunteers who work to make sure that we remember Lorain's rich history. And I am proud to attend an elementary school named after a real hero, Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King.
Well, Admiral DeLoach, I think you have a hard act to follow. That's all I can say. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Rear Admiral J.A. DeLoach. Rear Admiral DeLoach was born in San Diego in 1955 and followed in the proud family tradition of naval service. Both his father and grandfather served in the Navy. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1978 and entered service as an American submarine officer serving in 10 deterrent patrols. He helped pioneer many key initiatives that have since been adopted Navy-wide. After his active duty tours in 1989, Admiral DeLoach continued his service with the Navy Reserves. Amongst his assignments were Naval Intelligence, Submarine Warfare Staff, Navy Recruiting Commander, 7th Fleet Staff, and Naval Sea Systems Command Inspector General. Admiral DeLoach played an instrumental role in furthering the integration of the submarine forces reserve component with the active duty component into a, quote, surge-ready force. In September 2009, he was appointed a commissioner on the congressionally mandated Military Leadership Diversity Commission. He was the Assistant Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Resources, Requirements, and Assessments. In his civilian capacity, he was a senior staff member of the Defense Nuclear Facilities Safety Board, Washington, D.C., from 1990 to 2008. Admiral DeLoach became the 12th Director of Navy History and Heritage Command and Curator of the Navy. It is certainly fitting that Admiral DeLoach be our keynote speaker today to speak on Admiral Ernest J. King. It is with great humility and great pride that I introduce to you now and welcome Admiral J. DeLoach.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I usually like to trim it down a couple so I can spend more time with you, but good afternoon, everyone. It is a great Navy Day, and it's a great Navy Day here in Lorain. And I can't tell you how tickled I am to be here today. Earlier, as we were over just across the street from the birthplace of Admiral King, and we were commemorating commemorating a tribute to him with a very special park. And last night and today, we have before us members of the King family. And last night they regaled us with story upon story of their grandfather. So I'm honored to be here today to talk about the birthplace, the hometown of one of our great naval leaders, Fleet Admiral Ernest Joseph King. Now, many of you have already been aware of his background, but in brief, and some that you've already been told so far. And again, yes, I do have a tough act to follow with the students of Lorain here at Fleet Admiral King Elementary School. I think they're either future historians or future politicians. But yes, Admiral King graduated from the Naval Academy in 1901. He served in a variety of surface ships. He was an instructor at the Naval Academy prior to World War I. During the war, he served on the staff of the Atlantic Fleet. During the interwar years, he served at all levels of command and also in staffs. He served as the head of the postgraduate school at the Naval Academy. Most notably, though, he was in command of a squadron of submarines. He was qualified as a naval aviator, and this is a very unique combination. I say this because I am a submariner, and to go through both of these rigorous training programs is a significant accomplishment. With his previous experience on surface ships, he was a triple threat, a qualification that would undoubtedly pave the way for future assignments. And just prior to World War II, he was promoted to Rear Admiral. He was initially assigned to the General Board, which was an advisory board of senior admirals, and later was assigned as the commander of the U.S. Atlantic Fleet. After the United States entered World War II, he was appointed commander of the U.S. Fleet and as Chief of Naval Operations simultaneously. In December 1944, right after his 66th birthday, King received his final promotion to the rank of Fleet Admiral, the Navy's highest 5-star rank. And after the war, he was relieved by Fleet Admiral Nimitz as a CNO, and up until his death in 1956, he served in an advisory capacity to the Secretary of the Navy. Such a long, long, dedicated career to our nation and our Navy. And since we are dedicating this elementary school today, I'd like to focus on Fleet Admiral King, the educator, and how he later played a role in the Navy's increased emphasis on continuing education and professional development. There are several lessons that we can all learn from his experiences, even though his initial education was more than a century ago. Well, we commemorated Ernest King's birthplace on Hamilton Street, but did you know that at age 11, the King family briefly moved to Cleveland? While there, he announced to his father that he no longer intended to go to school and that he wanted to go to work instead. Well, being a very supportive father, his dad agreed, but with one stipulation. He would be required to work for at least 1 year and no backing out. And in June, young Ernest was eager to jump on this opportunity and quickly found work in a typesetting shop. But soon the daily grind lost some of its appeal, the glamour, and didn't seem like it was fun anymore. Well, by autumn, with its opening the books and the falling of leaves, he felt very nostalgic for the classroom and suggested to his father that he was interested in going back to school. Well, the elder King, however, held him to the original bargain. And even when the typesetting shop had closed down, thinking he had an out here, his father saw to it that he had meaningful employment with him at his own employer on the railroad. And once the year's contract was up, the family returned to Lorain, and the future admiral eagerly enrolled in Lorain High School, where he would later graduate as the class valedictorian. So, for the kids out there today, lesson number 1, stay in school. Someday you'll have a job, possibly a family, but to be a success, you need to finish school. Now, King's initial interest in the Navy came from reading a magazine in the Youth Companion magazine about a school in Annapolis, Maryland, the United States Naval Academy. Founded in 1845, the Naval Academy educates and commissions officers in the Navy and the Marine Corps. King, though from the Midwest, was no stranger to maritime life, and at least he had the background for it, and he lived in the right place. His father had once served on merchant vessels on the Great Lakes, and his grandfather was a shipbuilder. Lorain itself sits on the banks of Lake Erie, where one of the most notable engagements of the War of 1812 occurred. And King expressed to his father that he'd like to visit that historic area someday. After his sabbatical from school, Ernest thought more seriously about going to the academy. And as you may be aware, to go to the academy, you must have a congressional appointment. And in those days, senators did not have appointments. Only the representatives did, and only when they had a vacancy that was available to them. Congressmen could only give an appointment after a previous candidate had completed his 4 years at the Naval Academy and 2 years at sea. So that was 6 years between vacancies. Fortunately for King, a vacancy was available in 1896. But first he would have to compete with many other young men also interested in going to Annapolis. This would require competitive academic and physical examinations. He quickly began to prepare himself on both fronts. And when he graduated, number 1 in his class in the high school, the subject of his address was the uses of adversity. And he did well on his exams and received his appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy. Well, he left for Annapolis in August of 1897 with a round-trip ticket that his father had given to him. He never used the return portion, though he kept it for many, many years. He also left not only with a high school education, but a considerable acquaintance with steam engines, railroads, and the uses of adversity. And the upright and inflexible character of his Scottish grandfather, all good tools that would later serve him very, very well. Lesson number 2. Anything worth having is not going to come easy. If you want something badly enough, you're going to have to work for it very hard. And you're going to have to face adversity. At the Academy in 1897, just as midshipmen still do today, King went on a summer cruise to learn the practical side of Navy life. But he did something that our midshipmen don't get the chance to do or experience today. He had a unique opportunity to serve in combat aboard the USS San Francisco during the Spanish-American War in 1898. The next 3 years were mostly uneventful, and he ended up graduating 4th in his class of 1901. Though he graduated and his Marine classmates were now second lieutenants, it would be another 2 years before he and his Navy classmates would call themselves ensigns. In those days, Navy midshipmen had to spend 2 more years at sea to prove their mettle. And even still, it wouldn't simply come by serving time. You also has to pass an additional series of examinations, which of course he did. The next lesson. Your education and testing doesn't stop once you leave the classroom and you graduate. It's ongoing. It's continuous. To succeed and to prove yourself, you must expect to continue your education and continue to learn. It may be in a classroom or it may be a practical application such as King's 2 years after the Academy. When King was finally commissioned as an ensign in 1903, he spent the next 3 years mostly at sea continuing to learn his trade. He served in the Asiatic Fleet during the Russo-Japanese War and aboard the battleship the USS Alabama in a variety of assignments. In 1906, he had the opportunity to return to the Naval Academy, this time as an instructor. Life can be hard at sea, and oftentimes there's little personal time. Shore duty offers an opportunity to reset and refresh. And for King, he used his time for professional development and to become a great student of military and naval history. He also wrote an essay addressing how he believed the organization of ships needed improving. This essay received the gold medal from the United States Naval Institute and was published in their journal, Proceedings, in 1909. Now, up until that point, King was just another young officer. After the essay's publication, though, he was known throughout the Navy because his essay attracted favorable comments from many senior officers. Our next lesson for Fleet Admiral King: look for opportunities and make the best use of them. King used his off time wisely and expanded his professional military knowledge. He also capitalized on an opportunity to suggest ways to better run our Navy at the deck plates. While his ideas were rather simple, they were also revolutionary. He made a name for himself that paved the way for a long road of success. And while serving on the staff of the Atlantic Fleet, he was able to observe firsthand the importance of our Naval War College and how it helped improve the fleet through the education of our senior officers. Founded in 1884, the Naval War College received scant support from the Navy Department in its early days. Its theoretical focused emphasis on critical thinking and book learning were outweighed by opponents who were convinced that all one needed to do was to go to sea and learn their trade on the job. There was no need for studying. However, the writings of Sea Power by Captain Alfred Thayer Mahan supported more critical thinking. And by 1916, most career-focused officers were anxious to attend. Though it would be several years before he himself would attend the Naval War College, King used his experience as one more building block in his devotion to lifelong learning. Through the 19th century, the Navy relied on civilian specialists for its more technical activities. As a general rule, there was no formal education for an officer after leaving the academy. Advancement in the profession relied upon experience and personal study. However, in 1912, a postgraduate school was established at the Naval Academy, intended for officers in their 5th to 10th year of service. At that time, the postgraduate school primarily taught advanced engineering subjects for junior officers. After World War I, King probably had his biggest impact on the education of all naval officers when he was assigned as the head of this school in 1919. Just as the Naval War College in its early years received little funding, so too was the sentiment for the postgraduate school. However, King convinced the Secretary of the Navy that he needed more money through a very carefully developed proposal. And both him and the Secretary of the Navy went to Congress and got that funding to make it a viable school. He made many changes in the way officers were educated. Just as simple recommendations spurred change in shipboard organization. His recommendations for education were simple but radical and innovative. He encouraged complete participation from this school to ask questions and challenge what they were being taught, and not just to sit there and be lectured to. He revised the grading system to focus on learning as opposed to worrying about grades. And he developed plans to ensure his students had a healthy work-life balance. He knew that it was impractical and impossible to equip an officer with everything he would need to know throughout his service with just an academy education. He proposed progressive education at recurring intervals through an officer's career, from ensign to admiral. And of course, this was again challenged by the naysayers, some far up the chain of command, who felt that only good education was based on practical experience. But in the end, the standards he proposed for formal professional continuing education are very similar to the ones we use today. Now, it should be evident now that education was a top priority for King. And I can give you many more examples that demonstrate this: his days as a student at the Naval War College, his programs of professional education on board ship or ashore, his initiatives that encourage critical thinking that, in turn, increased initiative and decisiveness throughout the Navy. In closing, I would like to read a message from a former Chief of Naval Operations, Arleigh Burke, in 1956. And I read, Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King, the Navy's wartime Chief of Naval Operations, died today at the Naval Hospital, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Admiral King's contributions to our nation's security have not yet fully been appreciated by his countrymen, but history will give recognition to the brilliance, the moral courage, and the iron will of this great figure. Throughout his years in the Navy, he had a deep and abiding understanding of the fact that the responsibility for command decision was something which cannot be shared nor delegated, and his character was such that he sought and willingly accepted the full responsibility for those in authority. Coupled with his penetrating mind of extraordinary brilliance, Admiral King was blessed with a complete intellectual integrity and undeviating courage of his convictions. His conclusions were logical and his beliefs unshakable. Many times he adhered doggedly to his reasoned beliefs in the face of tremendous opposition. And no pressure, except the pressure of logic, could make him back down. The correctness of his strategic thinking demonstrated again and again. And when all the events of World War II are evaluated and digested, Fleet Admiral King will emerge as one of the outstanding military figures of our time. The Naval Service mourns his passing and honors his memory. With the naming of this school After Fleet Admiral Ernest King, who truly embodies the sentiment of this message. The city of Lorain honors not just a national hero, but a global hero. And on behalf of the United States Navy, we are honored to join you on carrying on the legacy of Fleet Admiral Ernest Joseph King. Thank you.
At this time, we would like to do a couple special presentations. So if Admiral Deloach and my students would join me, commemorating this occasion. Again, we get to shine. Our high school students, with the assistance of Andrea Corianis and the district's specialty gift shop, were very honored to design and make you this plaque. It is with great gratitude and thanks that we present this to you. Andrea, are you out here? No? The students were hoping you'd get to show it off to President Obama. That's how excited they were. They heard it was going to Washington, they're saying, okay. So thank you very, very much. We have one more presentation. So, the Lorain City School Board passed a resolution to loan this historical artifact, the original plaster casting used to make the bronze bust of Admiral Ernest J. King, which was sculptured by artist Walter Sins, to the United States Naval History and Heritage Command for display or use as you see fit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On behalf of the United States Navy, the Naval History and Heritage Command, I accept your gracious donation of this plaster cast model. When I talked to my curators about whether or not we had any such statue in our collection, the answer was no. And so this will, again, be a prominent place, and my staff is already telling me that they're going to take some time to pour another bronze model using this one. Right.
At this time, State Senator Gail Manning would like to say a few words.
King family, Dr. Branham, faculty, staff, board members, parents, and students, I am honored to be here today. This day is kind of special to me also, for several reasons. One, my mom and mother-in-law both graduated from Lorain High School many years ago. I also spent 37 years as an elementary teacher, so participating in this event holds a special place in my heart. I know how important elementary schools are. As Vice Chair of the Senate Education Committee and a member of the Ohio Schools Facilities Commission, one of my greatest priorities is to ensure that our students receive the best possible education, and I am committed to doing whatever I can. A new school brings pride to our community. On behalf of the Ohio Senate, I would like to present this Senate commendation recognizing this momentous occasion. I wish you all great success. Dr. Branham, can I present this to you?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Senator Manning.
Thank you, Senator Manning. Now our state representative, Dan Ramos, will take the podium to speak.
Thank you. Good afternoon. None of us are the same height. My name is Dan Ramos, and I'm our state representative, and I graduated from a school named after Admiral King. So it is with a profound sense of honor that I stand here today to help dedicate another school, as our city did 50 years ago in 1961, and name it again after Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. This, as we all know, is the latest in a tremendous project here in the Lorain City Schools to modernize and update the learning spaces for each and every student. A partnership between the Lorain City Schools, the Ohio School Facilities Commission, and all of our taxpayers and citizens to make certain that the students here in Lorain have the most up-to-date learning environment comparable with any in our state. A project that through the use of proper planning and steadfast determination by our architects and use of largely local and unionized workforce has, even through these many years, stayed ahead of schedule and under budget. This, coupled with the leadership of the administration, the school boards, past and present, and our tremendous LEA teachers, have certainly led our schools to what the state calls continuous improvement. Now, like I mentioned, I graduated from Admiral King, as did my parents, my sister, my aunts, uncles, and cousins. Admiral King was our city's hero because he was from here. We all know that, but when we delve a little deeper into Admiral King the man, we find out that he wasn't just born here, he was from here, and he took us with him where he went. And as I understand it, although the Admiral was one of the world's and the Navy's most brilliant tacticians and strategists, he wasn't necessarily the most pleasant man. One of his daughters described him as the most even-tempered man in the Navy, and that he was always in a rage. And President Roosevelt described him as a man who shaves every morning with a blowtorch. Now, at first blush, I don't know what images that renders forth for you, but to me, in thinking about it, he reminds me of me. He reminds me of us and our town. Some outsiders may see us as a little gritty or a little rough around the edges, but in each of us is that spark, that fire, that hard-working determination that tells us if we find a wall and we can't find a way around it, we're going to knock it down. It is that same unparalleled strength of conviction that Admiral King himself displayed when doing nothing short but saving the world from tyranny. As such, it is my hope that in naming this beautiful new school after Ernest J. King, that it serves an inspiration and a reminder to every student who walks through its doors and down its hallways, and reminds each and every one of them, and reminds every kid growing up here in Lorain, Ohio, that they have an opportunity to change the world, because 66 years ago, a kid from Hamilton Avenue came along and saved it. With that, I would like to present this commendation from the Ohio House of Representatives to Dr. Branham. And it is with great pleasure that we congratulate the Lorain City Schools on the dedication of Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King, the tribute, and the school, and salute all those participating in this noteworthy celebration, signed by the Speaker of the House, William G. Batchelder, and myself, Representative Dan Ramos. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ramos. We will have a formal reading of both of these documents September 28th board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very honored that both of you could join us for our dedication today. Greatly appreciated. This ceremony would not be complete without some words from the King family. It is again my honor and privilege to introduce James Robert King, the great nephew of Admiral King. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today, Admiral, Superintendent Branham, and citizens of Lorain. This is Lorain's Day. You should feel proud to be sitting out there and be from Lorain. When I read the materials, it was alleged that there were only 10,000 hours spent preparing this. I think there were a lot more hours, and some of you sitting out there today worked very hard, and you should feel very proud what you've done for your city. We commend you, and this is about you. And Admiral King was a citizen of Lorain. He came from Scottish and Celtic roots. His father, James Clydesdale King, who also lived over on Hamilton Avenue, built bridges, worked in machine shops. He was a blue-collar guy. And that's what Admiral King was about also. So congratulations to Lorain today and everybody that worked on this project. We're very honored, the King family is very honored, and I know that I speak on behalf of his grandchildren and others that are here today. We're very honored that you've taken the time to honor Admiral King. I wanted to share just a few anecdotes with you. I promise I'll be brief, but I wanted to share a few things about Admiral King and his personality, because we hear a lot about his career, but we forget about his personality. He was a very hard and sometimes harsh taskmaster. He was a Navy man through and through. But when times got tough, there was a certain Assistant Secretary of the Navy named Franklin Roosevelt who knew him from his days as Assistant Secretary. And in the darkness of World War II in 1941 and 42, he called on Admiral King because he needed a hard taskmaster. And Admiral King filled that role, and it was a necessary role to fill. The times fashioned the man. I'm a bit biased, but I think when you study his life and the other leaders at the time, I believe he was our most complex and misunderstood World War II leader. I'd like to read you something that he wrote at the beginning of his autobiography, which was written in 1952. He said, "In 1939, when I hauled down my Vice Admiral's flag as Commander Aircraft Battle Force," that was a very important command to him. It meant he was in charge of the carrier squadrons and the aircraft carriers. "I had behind me 25 years of experience in surface ships, 4 years in submarines, and 13 years in naval aviation. This extended training, covering all phases of warfare on, below, and over the seas, had been undertaken without desire to put any of it into practice. I was due for retirement on my 64th birthday, 23 November 1942, and it was only by the unanticipated timing of fate that any use was made of my experience. But because of the uncertainties of the world, the naval officer must work continuously while it is day, striving to perfect his knowledge of various techniques so that when night comes, he may be ready." Ladies and gentlemen, night came, and it was an awful war, and my parents and some of your parents, the greatest generation, fought that war, and their grandparents led that war. Admiral King could be harsh at times, but he had a rich and complex personality. He was a very paradoxical personality if you read about him. He was a loving father. He had 7 children: Claire, Elizabeth, Flory, Martha, Eileen, Mildred, 6 daughters, 1 son, Joe. Anybody that raises 7 children, his wife, Maddie, deserved credit while he was off at sea. What about his personality? What was he like? Aside from the news media saying all the time that he was harsh, which he was at times. He had a wonderful sense of humor. From some of the things we see, we believe that FDR probably relieved the stress with a hearty laugh now and then with Admiral King. And I'd like to read a short letter that Admiral King penned to President Roosevelt. He was still concerned about his 64th birthday. He said, "Dear Mr. President, it appears proper that I should bring to your notice the fact that the record shows that I shall attain the age of 64 years on November 23rd, next 1 month from today. I am, as always, at your service. Most sincerely yours, Ernest J. King, Admiral, U.S. Navy. To which the President replied and penned at the bottom of the letter in return to King. He said the following: EJK, so what, old top? I may even send you a birthday present, FDR. It's clear that they had a banter between them, and he had a great sense of humor. He was sentimental, we know that, because he loved Lorain and the people back home that had helped him in his youth. He came here often to visit with people that he knew when he was a child, and he came to see the Cleveland Air Show. And even when he became famous, he came back to Lorain and his blue-collar roots all the time. He was, number 3, I've got written down, he was mischievous and cantankerous. As a youth, he often got in trouble, chewing gum in class. On behalf of the King family, we could still have a rule here at the elementary school not to chew gum in class. He clearly had a joy to be, and he got himself into trouble quite a bit, especially when he was younger. 4th, I wrote down, he was a realist. He was an optimist, and he was a grand strategist. I believe that he thought that the best defense was a good offense, and he played offense. By God, he played offense. He had a laser-like focus on the Pacific strategy and executed it with vigor. He didn't exaggerate things with the media. He engaged in no wishful thinking. He told things like they were. He liked to keep things short and sweet, and he did not like to waste time. My grandfather Percy, Ernest's brother, would come over once a week and usually had a good story to tell. And the one I remember is him talking with his brother, and probably Ernest was needling Percy, but it was, "Percy, don't cry over spilled milk." If something goes awry in life, and this is a lesson for all of us, get over it, move on, and we're going to get on with the job, and we're going to get the job done. And that's what Admiral King did. There was a lot of adversity that he reflected in that earlier article that he wrote, and he faced adversity and met it. And he kept everyone with him going. Finally, there was a human side to Admiral King. I'd like to share a note that he penned to my mom and dad in 1948, after my mom and dad had gotten married. And I think it reveals the thinking of Admiral King's generation and what they were passing on to the World War II generation, that greatest generation that fought the war and died in the war. And I'll just read the last part of it. Since he penned to my mom, "Since we have not sent you any present yet, please find out what you like best. With the most happiness and with the best prospects in the world, your new uncle, Ernest J. King." The most happiness and with the best prospects in the world. What was he saying? I think what he was saying, ladies and gentlemen, we have preserved liberty, and now that's the greatest happiness that we can have. Liberty had been defended and always will be defended by the United States of America. Evil and tyranny can appear to be strong, but they can and will be defeated. It takes sacrifice, determination, and perseverance. And that's what the greatest generation did. They persevered, and their leaders made them persevere. Best prospects in the world. This is the United States of America. We've passed it on to you, and it's the best place to be. We've defeated tyranny. It's great prospects ahead for the greatest generation. And that's what he said to my parents. He was a wonderful man, he was a tough man, and he was a man for the times. We have a dedication to the school, a portrait of the Admiral, and I'd like to invite my sister to come up and just say a few words about the artist who rendered the portrait. Then we're going to have a couple of the students unveil it for us. Dad?
In 1986, veteran artist Howard Koslow was commissioned by Unicover Corporation to complete a series of 107 montage paintings depicting America's greatest military heroes. In this collection, Koslow preserves in painstaking detail the legacy of America's military history for future generations. Admiral King is included in this collection. When I contacted Mr. Koslow several years ago to thank him personally for his stunning painting of Admiral King, he made a point of telling me that as a subject, Admiral King, quote, had a very strong face. But Koslow's 2.5-year-long project painting America's greatest military heroes is only one milestone in his long career, which spans over 60 years. Howard Koslow has designed 55 United States postage stamps and has received numerous awards over the years, too many to mention. As a member of the Society of American Historical Artists, he is dedicated to the preservation and portrayal of historical truth through art. His paintings are in the permanent collections of the United States Coast Guard, U.S. Air Force, the Pentagon, NASA, the National Park Services, and many corporate and private collections. Mr. Koslow's biography is now on record with Who's Who in American Art. In my opinion, Howard Koslow is a national treasure. Due to the generosity of Howard Koslow and Fleetwood Corporation, the King family is very, very proud to donate to Admiral King Elementary School and the City of Lorain a copy of Howard Koslow's spectacular painting of Fleet Admiral King.
Okay, very good.
With our very best wishes. And we'd like to have the students present our painting.
Thank you so very much for the painting. We'll put it in a location where it'll be noted and observed every day. I think Lorain City Schools has taken the motto, we get the job done, no matter what adversity. I think that has been a part of us for at least as far as I know the last 20 years. As we get closer, it's getting close to what we've all been waiting for. And I don't mean the cookies and the punch. It's time for the ribbon cutting ceremony.
2, 3.
We have one more reading that Admiral King's grandson, Egerton Van Den Berg, wrote and handed to me right before the program. So if you would allow me to read this for him, I would be very proud. On Saturday, December 6, 1941, Admiral Ernest J. King was nearing retirement after 40 years of service in the U.S. Navy. He had served with Admiral Mays in the North Atlantic during World War I. While in his 40s, he became qualified as a submarine skipper, won his wings as a Navy pilot, and served as Superintendent of the Naval Academy. An advocate of naval air power, he commanded the Navy's Pacific Carrier Fleet in the 1930s, thereby gaining knowledge of the vast Pacific region. Then came Pearl Harbor. 8 days later, Italy and Germany declared war on America. It was a perilous and challenging time for President Franklin Roosevelt and for all Americans and our allies. Amid this crisis, it became clear to the President that expansion and reorganization of our Navy were urgently needed. But who could lead these massive efforts and help the President to deploy our Navy forces so as to best serve our nation and our allies? He thought of several distinguished admirals and knew most of them quite well. He knew that King, while brilliant, decisive, and marvelously experienced, was also a strong-willed and volatile, perfect. Just 15 days after Pearl Harbor, the Congress and the President named Ernest J. King Commander-in-Chief of all United States fleets. This position, never in our history before or after, was held only by Admiral King. In March 1942, the Congress and President added to King's duties the historic post of Chief of Naval Operations. Over the next 4 years, the Navy and American shipbuilders responded in a manner almost inconceivable then and now. New ships of all classes, transports, and warships were launched, manned, placed in service, and sent to battle over and under the oceans of the world. The honors brought to our Navy and nation in those days were legendary and belonged to all who served. Admiral King had another vital duty to perform. He's one of a small group of U.S. military and civilian leaders who regularly traveled with and advised the President as he formulated overarching strategies for military action in North Africa, Europe, the Pacific region, and Southeast Asia. In that role, Admiral King frequently interacted with civilian and military leaders of England, France, nationalist China, Russia, and the United States. The President relied heavily on King in matters concerning the Pacific theater. Most considered King to have been the principal architect of the Allies' strategy for defeating Japanese naval forces and retaking Pacific territories. This role frequently placed Admiral King in opposition to the desires of other nations, especially England's desire to emphasize recapture of mainland Europe. King also supported that objective, but used the importance of applying a proper share of America's naval might to protecting Australia and New Zealand, to the sea war with Japan, and to retaking Pacific territories which had been seized by the Japanese. Predictably, King advanced his views with vigor and with the full force of his knowledge and position. At the risk of being ridiculed and criticized, King tirelessly sought to ensure that America's security and future were duly considered. He simply did not regard being liked as part of his job. He would have liked his New York Times 1956 obituary, which concluded thusly: "He was the man who could not be had." Admiral King's grandchildren, several of whom are here today, knew him to be a tender and caring grandfather. They wonder how he came to be all that he was, a young man who went straight from the high school to the U.S. Naval Academy and graduated second in his class. Where and how did he acquire his thirst for knowledge and his desire to succeed that lasted throughout his life? Who taught him so to love his country? His descendants wish me to say much of that occurred right here in Lorain through his family, community, friends, and the elementary and high schools which Ernest J. King attended and always remembered fondly. And they thank you. We thank you. Thank you very, very much. In closing, I again want to thank everyone who contributed to make this dedication such an inclusive and memorable occasion. It certainly is an event that I will never forget. It has made our history and heritage more real, not only for us, but for the children of this school, this district, and this community. We at Admiral Ernest J. King Elementary will continue to bring our heritage and identity to life, instilling a legacy of pride and character for all of our students.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools, TV 20 WLCS.
To purchase a high-quality copy of the program you just viewed, please call Lorain City Schools Television at 282-8400.